Mzansi, don't cry. Gotta keep your head up even when the road is hard. Never give up. Mzansi, don't cry. My favorite Tupac song, Mzansi, don't cry. Gotta keep your head up even when the road is hard. Never give up. Mzansi, don't cry. Welcome to another episode of The Dissection. So today, I want to touch on something that I've touched on before, but I think is important to bring back. Because I've seen some negative reporting about General Mkhwanazi, recent negative reporting, and it seems that there's been one article after another article after another article which have been coming out with almost an agenda or an intention to besmirch him, to smear him, to demean him, to dismiss the validity of the issues that he raised on that seminal day. And before we even talk about the article, let's be clear. None of this, which is happening now, would have happened without that bold decision taken by General Mkhwanazi in the manner in which it was taken. The man chose to wear his special ops uniform. The man chose to give that press conference in the manner that he did. The man realized that he went to Parliament on the 5th of March and nothing happened. He realized that people were being arrested who were involved in critical investigations and that something had to be done. He came to the public and said, let me be square with you. Let me, tell you like it is. Here is what is happening. And he proceeded to lay out a variety of facts which have been validated up until this point. So from the questions of where's the evidence to this particular report we're going to look at now, it seems as if there's been attempts to try to shift public opinion on General Mkhwanazi. And I think there's a lack of appreciation of why there's a respect for General Mkhwanazi. He's a police officer who's on the ground, who's investigating these crimes, who's facing these particular syndicates, cartels, and has been for a long period of time. From what we heard about from Masemola, he's somebody who's always been opposed to wrongdoing and has been willing to speak up against wrongdoing through various periods of his career. This is not the first time he's raised these issues. Same applies to General Dumisani Khumalo. People respect him because he was able to put across the methodology that he was using, the 5-pillar approach, the analysis-led investigation, the prosecutor-led investigation, explain how those tactics were able to work within policing. Both of them were able to then take a stand and show that they were taking a stand against organized crime activities in South Africa, against HOSH KARI behavior, HOSHinanigans, HOSH KARI stunts. They were able to show that not only are they willing to, do these things, but they're willing to put their lives on the line. One of them actually fell sick while giving evidence. So people respect that. There's the clip from the Boondocks, a popular cartoon that I used to like a few years back, but they didn't do more seasons, but they should have done more seasons. Family Guy has so many seasons, and it's not as good as Boondocks. But in one of the scenes, I think it's Riley says to Granddad, real recognize real Granddad. Real recognize real Granddad. And you looking kind of unfamiliar right now. So real recognizes real, and people recognize the realness in General Mkhwanazi. They recognize the realness in General Dumisani Khumalo. They recognize the realness in what witness A has presented, what witness B has presented. And this is what's making them support them, because they really go through the consequences of the actions of these HOSH KARI stunts and these HOSHinanigans. They go through the impact of that in their communities. They see the impacts of Nyaope. They see the impacts of gun violence. They see the impact of gang activity. So when they see somebody trying to confront that, they understand the courage that it takes to do that at that level, and they understand the implications of all of that. This is where the respect and the admiration is coming from. And when you then come and say, oh, but what about this and what about that? You need to make sure that those complaints are so legitimate that they don't come across as, being a Karen, complaining, whining, or necessarily trying to dismiss the body of work and evidence that these individuals have presented. So the reporting from News 24 is that in a letter to the National Police Commissioner, Fani Masemola, right? It was dated on the 23rd of July, 2025. Mkhwanazi requested approval for 31 million to be used by the Political Killings Task Team from August of 2025 until the 31st of March, 2026. So Mkhwanazi recommended to Masemola, according to the reporting, that the estimated budget would be 31 million and that it should be approved and funded from the national budget. He further recommended that the budget be managed by the provincial office as recommended by the Chief Financial Officer of the South African Police Service. In a letter, the Chief Financial Officer of the South African Police Service, Lieutenant General Puleng Timpani, said the funds were available. So all of this is straightforward, but where the article seems to be taking a negative tone or seems to be raising issues which seem to be trivial but demeaning is that out of that amount, they say 700,000 will be spent on stationery and over 480,000 spent on laundry. And accommodation and overtime pay for officers will take the largest chunk of the money. And they give a graphic, which I'm going to show you as well, and which I'm probably showing at the right now on the screen. So here are my thoughts on all of this and this line of reporting and these types of attacks on General Mkhwanazi. Number one is that these costs actually seem justified. It's a large number of people. It's a lot of printing that they do of the evidence that they're collecting. We've seen the kind of files that they were presenting at the commission. So printing is expensive. Dockets are expensive to print. Printing, stationery, all of these things which fall into the stationery basket don't seem to me to be beyond the realm of a reality for such a large team which is working on such important work. 480,000 on laundry also to me does not seem like an exorbitant expense. I don't want to lie. It's exorbitant for an individual. It's not exorbitant for 160 people who are living in particular close quarters, who have to attend to those matters and can't necessarily be washing and drying on the line. And I don't think we should be expecting them to necessarily do that. I think it's reasonable. Sometimes, and I noticed this even at the university, you know, the university sometimes would say, we've raised 5 million for students. And they'd say, we've raised 5 million for students. We know we want students to be financially included. And when you look at that systematically, right, looking at an institution such as Wits University, where I went, you've got 40,000 students there, right? And if a student is paying on average 100,000 for tuition, for them to say that they've actually got 5 million rands means that they are funding 50 out of the 40,000 students. But now when you then consider how many students are financially excluded and facing those types of challenges, you may find that it's 5,000 to 10,000 students with a problem. So 5 million sounds a lot at an individual level, but it's not a lot when you're thinking institutionally, when you're thinking at that level, right? And when you now apply these numbers, 700,000 for stationery for a family would definitely be overkill. That probably is 5 to 10 to maybe a lifetime of stationery. But 700,000 on stationery for a police unit or a task team, I would think it's within the realm of fair cost. The other side of the equation is that this task team is actually doing effective work. 17% conviction rate, considering the difficulty of conviction in the South African framework. That's a high level of conviction rate. And people actually think the team should be extended and funded more, and the people leading the team should be retained. So if there's an argument that the team is too expensive, I don't think that's an argument that resonates with the public in particular, right? Because of the work that they're seeing. The actions taken by the policemen who've risked their lives to expose the HOSH cartels are applaudable. We know that DJs have been assassinated. We know that auditors have been assassinated. We know that witnesses have been assassinated. We know that there's been widespread looting of state-owned enterprises. And right now, the only group of people who seem to be willing to tackle that and tackle all elements of this octopus of HOSH KARI behavior are the Political Killings Task Team, the GCI Ops as well. If there was an argument to expand the budget of the GCI Ops, people would support it. We've seen evidence thus far of what General Mkhwanazi was speaking about on the 6th of July. His version has been backed up by multiple people and by documentary evidence which has been presented to the ad hoc committee and to the Madlanga Commission. even some of the people who have been implicated in all of this have made admissions. Brown Mkhwanazi, when he was doing all of the random interviews that he was doing, was actually unbeknowingly conceding to certain points and certain elements of what has already been presented by General Mkhwanazi and the other generals. Even some of the people implicated, right, have been making the concessions. So what that means and what that says to the public is that, listen, General Mkhwanazi made the right decision. If not for that 6th of July decision, there would be no ad hoc committee. There would be no commission. We would not be privy to all of this information. Why is he then being the guy who's being attacked? Why is there this desire in this name of fairness and balance to try to, remove the honor and virtue that the public has conferred upon this man as a result of how they've seen him operate and a result of what they've seen presented before them? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going on in respect to this strategy. I don't think it's working, right? Continuously attacking the men who've clearly risked a lot to put a stop to the dangerous cartel seems like taking the wrong side. I don't know if you get the same impression, but it feels that way to me. Think about what this HOSH KARI cartel is implicated in. They're implicated in kidnapping, car hijacking, murders, money laundering, house robberies, assassinations, arms dealing. It's a lot. It's a lot of stuff that has been mentioned and discussed, and a lot of with evidence. Think about what Witness A and Witness B were able to show. Witness B showing us that, there was tampering with the forensic report coming from the ballistics department, removing mention of that the cartridges that were discharged by the rifle were linked to the murder of Ahmad Swat. That's something critical. These people are now in hiding as a result of sharing information with the public. Why is there any attempt to paint them in a bad light? Sometimes in the name of media balance, the media sometimes balances in a way that actually then ends up justifying what Malcolm X said about the media, that the media will have you convinced that the fish that is being taken out of the water by the eagle is the perpetrator of its own demise. Right? Depending on how the angles are positioned. I don't know if you remember that Malcolm X quote or if he even actually said it, but there's a quote often to that effect. The only possible motive that I can ascertain from this type of conduct, the coordination, the consistency, the plethora of the attacks, is that there's an effort to push back on the version that has been given by General Mkhwanazi, General Fani Masemola, General Khumalo, the witnesses A, B, and all of the other people who've presented Mr. X, all of that, and to back up the narrative of Minister Senzo Mchunu. But if you've been watching the commission, if you've been watching the ad hoc committee, it becomes difficult for those things to seem credible because we've been watching these men discharge their testimony and they've done so in different ways. General Mkhwanazi discharged himself well, and the testimony of General Sibiya was actually full of contradictions, of obfuscations, right? Think about Minister Senzo Mchunu. His testimony was full of prevarications. His testimony has been sometimes hollow in that he promised to deliver certain pieces of evidence that didn't end up materializing. And there are still challenges to his testimony, as we can see from the engagements which are going on today in the ad hoc committee, right? So it's confusing why there is this approach, and I think it actually damages mainstream media credibility. This approach is how the mainstream media is losing credibility with the public. Print media lost its following in part because of digital disruptions, right? You had Twitter, you had Facebook, you had all of these things come in, and they reduced the amount of time that people were spending with print media and actually their interest in print media. But now we've got digital media in the main, and you have these large platforms, right? Be it News 24, Daily Maverick, and others that have really been part of constructing the conversation and being part of manufacturing consent. But they're also now losing followership and credibility because sometimes they make decisions like this which seem to be part of an agenda, which seem to be part of manufacturing consent. If you're watching for the first time, I talk a lot about the book Manufacturing Consent by Noam Chomsky and Edward S. Herman because it explains how the incumbency which includes the political elite and the economic elite, use mainstream media to serve their purposes, to set an agenda, to cultivate public opinion in favor of their motives. But the public is getting tired, which is why they are moving away from mainstream platforms to platforms such as YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok to have their conversations with authentic voices that they can have a relationship with and that they can actually also challenge if those voices say things that they disagree with. And you'll see that even in the comment section, when you read the comment section here, that there's robust engagement. So I thought, let me just address that, because I thought, hey, why is this continuing? Anyway, let's move to the second topic. And if you haven't subscribed, before we go to the second topic, subscribe. You need to subscribe. We're trying to bring HOSH KARI behavior down. We're getting threats. We're getting intimidation. We're getting all manner of rhetoric, and the least you could do is to subscribe. It's free 99, mahala, 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 till 30.99, not 20.99, 30.99. And if you're not subscribed, that's HOSH KARI behavior of another kind. HOSH KARI behavior of another kind. Huh? Why are you holding back that subscribe? You're trying to subscribe to a slay queen. What? Subscribe, Lana Baba. Let's go together and reduce the HOSH KARI behavior. On a joking tip, but serious tip, just check if you subscribe. You may think you are subscribed, but you're not subscribed. Just press that, notifications, jump into the comments. Let's have a conversation. Now, let's talk about the ad hoc committee. They were continuing today. And there was some very tough questions for Minister Senzo Mchunu from the benches of the ANC. And I'm just going to focus on that a little bit, because it suggests to me that when there is a report drafted on this, that the committee is not actually going to have much room to breathe, or give him much room to breathe on the responses that he's given in some elements. I've been thinking, where are the votes in terms of the ad hoc committee? Because ultimately a report has to be drafted around what everybody has said. And one of the people I thought would have the votes would be Minister Senzo Mchunu. But based on the way the questions were coming at him from the ANC, from all of the people, if you think about Ngola, if you think about Sokanyile, you think about Kusela Diko, you think about the chief whip as well of the ANC, Mdumiseni Mtuli, it was not looking good. It was respectful, but not looking good, to be quite honest. Now, that question of immediately, what does immediately mean, came up again. Kusela Diko was not persuaded that the interpretation that the minister gave was genuine, right? The issue of the Phalaphala report came up. This became like an explosive thing, because as Kusela was asking, she then was joking, saying, we're going to teach MK Party. MK Party then got involved, saying, no, don't talk to us this kind of a way. Then Julius got involved, saying, no, Kusela is right. It's okay to refer to other members of parliament's questions in the committee as part of your line of questioning. It got heated. The volume just went up and up and up and up and up. And I think the chairperson actually dealt with that whole situation well, and he calmed down the temperature of the room. So in that respect, he's been doing very well to bring the temperature down, and keep things moving. So he may have overall been a great choice for this particular process, right? The issue of the Phalaphala report came up, and there was a whole brouhaha. As someone once said, brouhaha. My preferred word is hullabaloo. Hullabaloo. There was a time when my English teacher came into the class with his hands like this. And then he was like, who's causing this hullabaloo? And his hand was like this. He used to like putting his, who's causing the hullabaloo? I recently saw him. He was observing an election last year, and we had a conversation about his use of some of these words. So point being, there was a hullabaloo, or a brouhaha, if you prefer, around the Phalaphala report. And it's an important question in the sense that there is still an intention to understand who classified the report. Can the report be declassified? Minister Mchunu says it was not him, it was IPID that did that, and there may be some appetite from the members of parliament to get to the bottom of if that was a rational decision or a cover-up type of a decision, because there have been things around that Phalaphala matter which have not always made sense, the transaction not perfected, this, that, and the other, what you've seen around that, So, in that respect of the Phalaphala issue, though, Ms. Kusela Diko seemed to be more willing to defend the president, which was different to how she was coming at, Minister Mchunu. Like I said, it was all respectful, but you could get from the exchanges that, listen, she's not asking some sweetheart questions here. And her biggest disagreement was actually that of the interministerial committee being disestablished, because the minister keeps insisting that he could disband the task team without consulting anybody. It was a political decision, that the IMC was no longer in existence. And Ms. Kusela Diko has a lot of experience in this particular area. She's been, working closely with the executive, and as chairperson of a committee herself, is very privy to the machinations of government. And she was not in agreement with him. She seemed to disagree. And then she also disagreed on the issue of Nkabinde and his appointment, and that whole appointment of his not making sense in terms of qualifications. This is some of what she had to say. And you can also see Malema also jumped in at some point. Here's how it went down.
Minister, this is where I disagree with you, and it's on the IMC. The handover report that Minister Ele would have handed over to you, if he used a standard template of handover reports, he should have, in that handover report, indicated which IMCs he was serving in as Minister of Police. Was this particular IMC there?
Yes, it was there.
Okay. So you had said, and I had been tempted to agree with you, that an IMC ends at the end of a term. But when I tried to look at this, I was informed that IMCs are established in two ways: one by presidential minute, or two by cabinet decision. And there's always a process to disestablish an IMC, which is either it going to report to cabinet or memos being signed. Now, why would you then take it that at the end of the sixth administration, this particular IMC that had been handed over to you had been disestablished?
It's because cabinet at some point did sit, and there were announcements of a new committees, IMCs and all of that, and this one was not mentioned.
Okay, then I think that may be new evidence, Minister, because what we have been deliberating on is, does it exist from sixth administration to seventh administration? But if you are saying that then cabinet agreed on the IMCs for this term, we would really like to see that, because I think it has an implication on your testimony. Now, you then say, Minister, that the reason you disbanded the PKTT was because it had been established by the IMC. You say that in your testimony. I'm not sure which page. Then in page 235 of the bundle, which is an information note written by General Khumalo, Lieutenant General Khumalo, requesting funding. He says the PKTT was established by the IMC. Page 247, which is a report to the minister written by General Masemula. In the fourth paragraph, he again confirms the establishment of the PKTT by the IMC. So there's no dispute, I think, there in terms of the PKTT being established by the IMC. You then say, when you took a decision to de-establish the PKTT, was because it has been established by the IMC. Why did you not, and I think you've been asked this question, I'm just not getting it, why did you not then consult the other ministers who would be affected by your decision to disband? Because you're saying it was an IMC thing. Yes, the IMC doesn't exist, but why didn't you tell your colleagues who had been part of establishing it?
I'm sure it is the manner in which the decision was arrived at.
Okay, Honorable Malim.
No, thanks, Chair. Minister, the NPKTT was established in 2018. Which administration is that one of 2018?
The fifth administration.
And then it continued after the elections of 2019.
Yes.
Which takes away the argument that you said they get dissolved automatically once a new administration comes in.
It doesn't necessarily. I haven't checked whether the interministerial committee that had been established in 2018 did get confirmed or endorsed or continued with in 2019. I suppose it happened.
No, Minister, me and you sitting here, and all of us, we know the interministerial committee that was established and came into effect, the NPKTT, July 2018.
Yes.
After that, there's never been any other announcement of re-establishment or anything of that sort. That committee, as it was established, it went on into the 7th administration.
Yeah.
And now you're moving away from your argument, which you said earlier. A new administration automatically dissolves the IMC.
No, I'm not saying so. In cabinet, there could have been a meeting where at the beginning of 2019, that particular IMC was endorsed. It doesn't mean that each time cabinet establishes its committees, it will go public and so on, especially if it was endorsed. I would need to check those facts.
So I'm happy that Honorable Sangoni says that's a new evidence that you are presenting to us, because all along we lived under the impression that when a new administration comes in, it's automatic. But then you go on to make another commitment, which I don't think is permissible. Honorable Sangoni says, you say cabinet might have established certain committees and all of that, and then we'll have to. She says, no, you must come and share that with us because it's a new thing. But sitting here, don't think you can just share the minutes of the cabinet, because you are going to commit to bringing the minutes of the cabinet here, which shows that certain committees were established except this one. And then you are going to come back and say, no, it is not permissible to take out the minutes of the cabinet. Are you sure you will bring us the minutes of the cabinet?
Subject to whatever condition, like you are talking about.
So we'll never know, because if you are denied that, then it's clear we'll never know. Then we're left with one information which is at our disposal. It was established, it came into effect July 2018, and then only got dissolved by yourself, because that's the only evidence and information we have. Apart from what you are saying now as a new evidence, we'll have to rely on what we have. Thanks, Chair.
I don't think that members of parliament are persuaded by some of the answers that the minister has been giving. And I think he's changed some of the answers about the IMC. And I think the MPs were correct to pick it up and point it out. The minister also had to deal with multiple questions about Brown Mkhwanazi again. And, you know, Brown Mkhwanazi was referring to himself, Sibuya, and Mchunu as we in one of the messages. So Mzeni Ntuli asked him, why is this guy calling you guys we? Why does he feel like he's part of the we? The minister was asked if he had made any mistakes and he'd do things differently. He didn't seem to be willing to make that concession that he had made mistakes. The Patriotic Alliance had a different angle today, which I thought was interesting, because they seem to be supporting the dissolution of the task team, which seems to be a position in line with maybe where Kenny Kunene would stand right now and where Gayton McKenzie would stand right now, because it was that task team that in a small role was involved in some of the arrests, where Kenny Kunene was then found at the house of Katiso Molefe, something which just brought his name into the conversation in a way that I think he still doesn't like to be mentioned at all. And there's that tension there. So that's what happened. And overall, as we approach the end of the minister's questions from the ad hoc committee, it seems that, you know, the minister may be given cover in respect to how well he knows Brown Mkhwanazi, and the ANC may even defend the lawfulness of the decision. But it's not clear that they will go so far as to defend the rationality of the decision. I don't think the other parties will defend either the lawfulness or the rationality of the decision. So it may very well be on lawfulness, you have ANC and Patriotic Alliance, and on rationality, everyone says not rational because of the issues. And in terms of, was there a direct link between Brown Mkhwanazi and the minister? So far, that has not yet been fully proven or established. There is still mostly circumstantial evidence. And obviously, the minister did not give over his phones. The search and seizure was not successful. That may have changed the dynamics. Gabinde also was not willing to give over his phones. The search and seizure there was not successful. Those search and seizure seems to have been done with warrants. So it seems that they were lawful. And because now the cops don't have access to those devices, they cannot look at the communications holistically because they don't have access to those devices, which gives people who are the owners of those devices some plausible deniability, because now the cops cannot necessarily prove certain messages that came from your end to those particular people. So I'm going to make a different episode about the witness B testimony and cover that properly. Look out for that sometime tomorrow early in the morning. I want to close off, though, by having a discussion about free speech and intimidation. And I want to first off go back to Section 16 of the Constitution, which says everyone has the right to freedom of expression, which includes freedom of the press and other media. Press and other media. Commentators on YouTube are part of other media. Analysts are part of other media. The dissection is part of other media. And freedom of expression is a right. People have the right and the freedom to receive or impart information or ideas. Freedom of artistic creativity and academic freedom and freedom of scientific research. I do research on these topics, and my preferred way of disseminating my thoughts, my academic thoughts, is via the medium of YouTube. But I do sit down and I write my thoughts and I look at various viewpoints and I try to give you what is known as, what do they call these things? They call them, what do they call them? They call them video essays. So I make video essays. This is the format that, so I take what I've typed out and scripted, and then I make it a video essay. And we have a conversation about that. Some of them are shorter, some of them are longer, but this is what I am actually participating in. So not only is it something which falls in freedom of expression, freedom of other media, freedom to receive or impart other ideas, it's also part of the freedom of research, because that's part of what I do. Now, there's some people who want to intimidate podcasters, intimidate people who are talking about these issues and act like we're not part of the media, we're not entitled to free speech. I actually think we should have something as a podcaster forum, and maybe I'll make the podcasters forum, because I need to go to editors forum. So maybe podcasters also need a forum where if they're intimidated or threatened, they then can have recourse to lawyers who can help them pro bono and actually also make sure that they are protected from intimidation, from threats, from all these type of bully activities which seek to silence legitimate speech. There is a long road between legitimate speech and defamation. If witnesses are speaking on various issues and those issues touch you, it's not me who wanted to talk about you. It's the witnesses at the commission and at the ad hoc committee. And this is one of the topics that I want to cover for the community, because it's one of the biggest topics affecting, South Africa, one of the biggest topics affecting even the region, because we were told by General Mkhwanazi that these people are dealing across the region. So I think it's just, the podcasters forum is something that we'll have to make and look into. Add the producers and other people who work on the team. Maybe I'll talk to Saul Penduga and see if he's interested in that kind of a project, and other podcasters that I'm friends with or that I know of who are, creating content which touches on current affairs on occasion. There's the media environment has changed. Back in the days, all you had to attack was a newspaper reporter, because that was the media environment in 1910. Then at a certain point, you also had to attack radio journalists, because radio came into play, and that would have been the environment in 1947, perhaps. Then at some point, you'd have to attack newspaper writers, radio, and also people who are on TV, because TV has become something. And if you remember, when that man hung up on Sakina Kamwendo, I defended her. When they attacked those journalists from Inside Factor, I defended them. Because I was like, no, these guys are also part of the media. Even if they're not saying what you want to hear, they're also part of the media ecosystem. Sometimes we hear voices speak only when particular journalists, maybe when they say Zuma is attacking this journalist, and all of a sudden there's a lot of activity. But I said, no, what has been done to Sakina is wrong. And it was wrong, right? The point I'm making is that as time goes, things shift. We've seen now that the media environment has diversified. Someone can be in new media and be on TikTok. Someone can be in new media and be on podcasts, audio-only MP3s that you stream from your RSS feeds wherever you listen to your podcast. Someone can be in new media and be here on YouTube making this type of content. But then if you try to silence somebody on YouTube, that is also a violation of freedom of speech. That is also something which is a violation of that person's rights and also deprives their audience of certain things. So I'm only saying this to say that, I'm aware of all of these things that are happening. I'm talking to people. I'm trying to take all of the necessary measures that are necessary to take. But at the same time, I want you to understand that I've asked myself a question. If I've asked myself this question, if I love what I'm doing so much, this as part of what I'm doing, I love living in a way where I make this contribution. Am I willing to stand up and die for it? And to be honest, with a little bit of trembling, yes. I don't think that we should give in to bullies. I don't think we should hide HOSH KARI behavior. I don't think that we should back down when we are participating in legitimate discussion, right? At a certain point, every man has to make a decision. Am I going to shrink into fear, or am I going to roar my truth, no matter what the consequences may be? This is not, what is it, Twitter fingers or whatever. This is actually a body of media that is providing value to the world. To trivialize it into as if it's just, no, people are tweeting. No, we're researching, we're reading, we're thinking carefully about these things. And sometimes I would say we're doing better work than mainstream media. That's why you saw in America podcasts had such a role. If I were to just take the number of books that are just close to me here so that you can see, the closest ones are the two that we were referring to yesterday. They're just still on the desk, right? Criminal procedure, criminal law. This stuff is important. And at some point, we have to appreciate that this is also now part of media. This is also now part of the public discourse. And because of that, look, I think the work has to continue. There's a guy in the Bible who had to build the wall with one hand and he had to have a sword in the other hand. His mission was to build the wall, but he still needed the sword. And there's scripture that says, no weapon formed against us shall prosper. Weapons will be made, but they will not prosper. And there's another scripture. I'm very bad at telling you the number of the scripture, like, Isaiah such and such. But the word says, we have not been given a spirit of timidity. We have not been given a spirit of timidity. Another word says you need to speak to the bones and tell them to rise. Bones of fear. We need to tell them that we need to tell the people who have been crippled into fear and are now dry bones, that fear can no longer continue to dominate how we move. And the only platform I have is the microphone. And I understand sometimes why they say the pen is mightier than the sword. Because the sword cuts once, but the pen cuts forever. But the pen has evolved. The pen has evolved. The microphone is the pen. The keyboard is the pen. These platforms are the pen. So those who wield the sword always want to cut off the hand that holds the pen. But it's the obligation of that hand to write as much as it can. Because those words echo. Those words echo. They linger. And they sometimes lead to action. So it's just something I thought I should say. That's what's been on my mind. Guys, I'll catch you in the comment section. Let's have a conversation.